Hello, it's Jack Bannister here, Head of Sixth Form at Waldegrave. I'd like to start by saying how happy I am, how pleased myself and all my colleagues are to have welcomed our Year 13 students back onto the school site for this academic year. I know that for students there was a varied experience of remote learning. Some really relished the opportunity to work at their own pace and to be operating outside of the busy school environment. I'm also very aware that for others it was much more of a challenge to maintain a routine and stay motivated and to learn effectively without the hands-on support of their subject teachers. I can say that from the perspective of myself and my colleagues, that the best part of our job is our interaction with the young people at our school, and so for us it's been an absolute pleasure to be seeing our students again, and we're looking forward to providing our support throughout this challenging but hopefully very exciting and rewarding year. We also know that parents and carers have an absolutely vital role to play in ensuring that our students achieve their full potential at the end of this year. And it's for that reason that we would normally start a new academic year by inviting you all onto the school site for our Key Information Evening. Unfortunately, this year, large gatherings of that nature are not possible for obvious reasons, and instead we've made a very detailed PowerPoint that hopefully goes over all the aspects of school life and the key priorities for this year that you'll be interested in. And I'm also recording this video presentation to support that set of slides as well, and hopefully you'll find this a useful and informative replacement for the physical event. So I think it's important to start by reminding ourselves of our sixth form vision, which underpins everything that we do here in the sixth form. So it says at Waldegrave Sixth Form, our vision is to ensure our students enjoy a love of learning, achieve their aspirations, and feel empowered to become the leaders of and contributors to a better society. And really for us as staff, when we're planning our lessons, organising our activities, supporting students with their UCAS applications, that's always our sort of reference point, that vision, and it's something that we would encourage students and parents and carers to keep in mind as well throughout the course of the year. Our sixth form team are the key people in terms of staff that play a role in us being able to achieve that vision. There are a couple of changes to note. I will be continuing as head of sixth form this year. Miss Pugh will be taking over as the head of Year 13. She's a very experienced member of the sixth form team and supported our previous cohort of Year 13, so she's very familiar with the sort of challenges that present themselves in this, the final year of their school-based education, and she's also very familiar with that UCAS process as well. We still have our dedicated team of form tutors. We have our academic and pastoral mentors who are there to provide some additional support to students who need it, Mrs. King and Mrs. Gonzalez. And we also have a slight restructuring of our support staff team as well. So Mrs. Everard, who's been with us for some time now, and students will be familiar with, has taken on the role of sixth form manager. So she's running that team. And alongside Mrs. Ridgely and Mrs. Hughes, who've also been with us for a while, we're now joined by Mrs. Allen as well. So we've got a bit more capacity within that team. Taking you through some of the main aspects of sort of day-to-day school life that students will experience. These are the expectations that we've given to students for lessons. It's really, after such a long absence from school, about getting back to basics, making sure that students are arriving on time, that they're well prepared, they have both the mindset and the equipment and resources that they need to learn effectively, and that they're being really proactive in lessons, whether that's answering questions, asking questions, really engaging in tasks, and just making the most of having the opportunity to be back on the site and having face-to-face lessons. Another key aspect of the school day is tutor time. The timings of that have slightly changed. We now have a 20-minute tutor time every single weekday, going from 2:05 to 2:25. Alongside the lessons, it's absolutely compulsory that students attend tutor time. We have slightly restructured what we're doing with those slots, and you can see on the right of the slide there the various different focuses that we have for each day of the week. So on Monday, students will be delivering their own presentations to the rest of the class, and that's about developing those kind of transferable employability skills, being able to research something, put together a presentation, and then speak publicly about their ideas, manage a discussion. We know that those are skills that Often students are asked to exercise at university as part of their undergraduate courses, presenting in seminars, but we also know that sometimes presentations are required in job interviews or indeed in people's careers, and so we're supporting students with understanding how to do that effectively and then having an opportunity to practice. Tuesdays in Tutor Time, we're really focused on independent learning. So that's just giving students a bit of a time to get back on top of their workload and to have a nice, quiet, purposeful environment within a classroom with the supervision of their form tutor to get on with some work. PDC on a Wednesday, you also might call this PSHE, we'll be going over lots of important topics very relevant to our Year 13 students. At the moment, we're looking at various aspects of health and well-being, but throughout the year, we'll go on to look at various issues of social and ethical importance, as well as sort of financial skills that we would want students to have as they go off to university and get their student loans and have to look after their own financial affairs. On Thursdays, we're having briefing or assembly. We're not able to do that in person, but we're going to be either live streaming into the tutor rooms or pre-recording briefings from myself or from Miss Pugh, the head of year. And on Friday, we have the fun activity. So we're really hoping that Tutor Time becomes a really appreciated and valuable part of the week for students. It's, as I said, compulsory to attend, and we really want students to throw themselves into it and get involved. Their tutor group is really their school family, and we want there to be a positive atmosphere there. And it's also really important that students are able to see their form tutor every day so that that member of staff can keep an eye on their well-being and step in if students need advice, guidance or support. Students also have work periods. They do have fewer work periods on their timetable in Year 13 than they do in Year 12, and that's because Year 13 students have 5 periods for each subject every week as opposed to the 4 they would have had in Year 12, so there's some extra lesson time, and that only leaves them with 9 work periods on their timetable. Just a reminder that we always call these work periods rather than free periods because students should be working in there. I've actually noticed a little mistake on this slide, and the Year 13 students don't have the study base, that they have the canteen this year. And the reason for that is that the government guidance has asked us to create year group bubbles and to avoid students in different year groups from crossing over with each other or sharing facilities wherever possible. And so we've had to keep the Year 12s and the Year 13s separate. The canteen we have made some improvements to even since the start of term. We now have somewhere in the region of 160 seats in there. We've moved lockers into there so that Year 13s can still have access to those. We've put some trolleys of Chromebooks in there to provide IT resources. And based on sort of feedback from students and our own observations of how the space is working, we're also trying to create some areas where students can charge their own devices and to move the photocopier that's currently on the top floor down into there as well. So hopefully that's a sort of an environment that we can really make work for Year 13 students. During those work periods, the focus should really be on independent learning, and a reminder that students are supposed to be doing 5 hours of independent work for every subject each week outside of their timetabled lessons. So that may include homework tasks that have been set by the teacher and are very specific, or it might be tasks that students have really identified for themselves. This is the framework that we give to students to understand what they should be doing in terms of independent learning. So they might be preparing for their upcoming lessons by pre-reading, so going through the textbook, looking at the next topic, giving themselves a foundation of knowledge before they go into the class. They may be consolidating after the lesson by finishing off tasks that were incomplete from class, reading back over their notes, highlighting the key information, completing extension tasks, doing a bit of extended reading on the topics that they've covered and adding extra detail to their notes. Students can also be practicing, by which I mean practicing their exam skills. So lots of teachers give students banks of exam-style questions, and these can also be found throughout textbooks or on past papers. So the more practice of exam questions students can do, the better. A lot of the success in A-level comes down not just to memorising content, but developing the relevant subject-specific skills as well. And really the best way of doing that is by practicing exam questions. And finally, students can be revising as they go. Quite often students say, well, there's no point revising now, it's too early in the year, I'll forget by the time we get to the exams. But really, the way that we believe revision works is that you build up layers of knowledge and understanding over time. So although if students are revising now, then they're not necessarily going to remember what they've done in a week or so's time, what they will have done is created those first layers of knowledge, which will make it much easier to regain that understanding when they go back and revise for the second time. So we would really encourage students to be making their revision notes now, quizzing themselves, explaining concepts to others, including yourselves as parents and carers, and just going over what they've learnt in class, both during the course of Year 12 and this year as well, as much as possible. To support independent learning while students are on site using the work periods, we would really encourage students to be bringing their own devices in as much as possible. As I've already mentioned, we have put some Chromebooks into the canteen for Year 13 students to use, but our IT resources are very stretched at the moment. In some of our practical subjects, we've had to curtail some of the more practical activities and replace those with IT-based lessons. We've also had to split our IT resources between different year groups to avoid the sharing of devices, and that does mean that we don't have quite the same availability of computers as we had before. So where possible, we would really encourage students to bring in their own laptops to work on. It is important that if students do that, that they take responsibility for keeping things safe and that they make responsible use of the school network. Students may also be doing quite a lot of their work at home. We have given Year 13 students a very high level of freedom, so they're only expected to come in to attend their lessons and tutor time, and outside of that, they're welcome to go home in their work periods. That's really more freedom than we've given to Year 13 in previous years, but it's an acknowledgement that the working environment here isn't back to normal and is not necessarily ideal. It's the best that we've been able to do, but we understand that some students really have enjoyed working from home, and we want to allow them to capitalise on that. From your perspective as parents and carers, the best thing that you can do to facilitate that is to try the best you can within the context of your own household to provide a really good working environment. So it's about making sure that students have got good Wi-Fi, some kind of desk or workspace, maybe that's a dining table, that they've got the stationery and equipment that they need. And we really encourage students to practice zoning, which is the idea of having different areas or zones of the home for different activities. A good example of that is having perhaps a desk in the bedroom to work at and then to keep the bed for sleeping. Quite often students will want to sit on their bed or in bed to do their work, and what we often find is that leads to students associating the bed, which should be a place of rest, with the idea of working and the stress and anxiety that may come with that, and it can lead to problems sleeping. So we really encourage students to have a dedicated area for work, if at all possible. Some of the mechanisms that we have to support students and their academic success, firstly, overtime. There are two different types. This is not intended as a sort of punishment, really. It's meant to be a supportive measure. So in study support overtime, we would ask students to stay behind for 2 hours after the end of their final lesson of the day. They would have to sign in with us at sixth form reception, sit down and get on with the work that their teacher who's put them into overtime has set, and then sign out with us at the end of the 2 hours. So we're really, through that system, we're encouraging students, or really forcing students, to sit and do 2 hours of quite focused work. We then have supervised overtime, where students are sat in a room, very quiet, supervised directly by a member of staff. And that's a much more structured environment that we would use for more serious behavioural infringements, or if students are really not engaging in the study support overtime. So this is not a new system. Students will be used to it. You can see some further details about the kinds of things that might lead to a student being put into overtime, and the details of when and where it occurs. We also follow a stepped procedure for addressing non-attendance at overtime. Again, you can see the details of that there. Assessment and monitoring is really important, particularly this year in Year 13. We are due to give out UCAS predicted grades at the end of this week on Friday. We'll revisit that topic later in the presentation. Students were told on their induction day that they will be having a set of mock exams, one paper per subject, at the beginning of October. I know that that has the potential to create some anxiety, but the purpose of it really is to help students prepare for their proper public exams in the summer. It's about giving students an opportunity to practice and develop their revision skills, which was a chance that was taken away from them in summer by the circumstances that we're in. It's also an opportunity for students to look back over their Year 12 content, which will be the focus of those exams, and get some sort of definitive grades and some good teacher feedback, which again, they've not necessarily received too much of over recent months. And that will help students to understand where they are at and what they need to do going forward in terms of their revision and their conduct in lessons. And it will also give our heads of department and our subject teachers some really robust data with which they can determine the level of intervention that's needed and the students to target with that. So it's supposed to be a helpful process, and after that we will be reporting grades home through monitoring and having support meetings with those students raised as a cause for concern. We have our Parents' Evening, or PCM, in November, which will be a remote event, and we'll be giving you more information nearer to the time about the systems being used for that. At the end of February, beginning of March, we have a second set of mock exams, and that's the time we would usually be doing them. The October set are in essence an additional round of mock exams, and then again in March we would have another set of monitoring going home, reporting those grades and support meetings. And at present the A-level exams are scheduled to begin in May, going on into June, although we will keep you updated if those are pushed back. You will have seen me make reference to support meetings there. Many of you will know that in every round of monitoring, teachers can raise students as a cause for concern based on attendance, punctuality, deadlines, or organisation. Where students are a cause for concern in one subject, it will be the department, the subject teacher, who will put in place the necessary interventions. Where students are cause for concern across two or more subjects, there will be a meeting with either myself or Miss Pugh, the head of year, involving parents and students, and we will come up with a sort of support plan together. And again, the idea of that, as the name suggests, is to be supportive. It's not meant to be a punishment or a punitive measure. It's about all of us, teachers, parents and carers and students, working together in partnership to really ensure that we're aware of what's not quite going right for students, what their strengths are, and that we have a really clear and robust plan in place to allow them to go on and address any issues there are and maximise their potential. We also have our academic mentors available in the sixth form. Sometimes teachers or the head of year might refer students to the academic mentors if we identify an issue, but they're available at sixth form reception. That's where they're based, and if students want the help themselves, they're very welcome to go up to sixth form reception and ask to see one of the academic mentors, Mrs. King or Mrs. Gonzalez, and they can offer one-to-one support. They can deal with particular issues as a sort of one-off session, or they can see students more regularly. They can do small group sessions. They can help to develop particular skills like organisation, extended writing, time management, and so on. So I would really encourage students to make use of that resource. We also have our inclusion team, who are primarily involved with those students who have an EHCP or doing testing for access arrangements. If your daughter or son does have an EHCP and for whatever reason you haven't informed us up to this point, please do tell us so that we can organise the appropriate support. The final mechanism really for support academically is our Bursary Fund, and this is a form of financial aid. We have lots of students in the year group who are already registered for the bursary, and I would really encourage them to make use of that at the start of this new academic year to help with the purchase of textbooks, stationery, and any other learning resources. We're also very aware that the economy has been significantly affected by the global pandemic, and so we're acutely aware that the financial circumstances of families may have changed over recent weeks and months. So if any of you do believe that your daughter or son may be eligible for the bursary, you can see the email address to contact there. And equally, students can use their school email themselves to contact that email address if they would like to make orders using their bursary. Moving on to some of the sort of key expectations that we have for students. Attendance is very important. I think we're all very aware that lots of time has been missed out of school, and so we really want to maximise the presence of students here on the site. So we have said to students that they have to come in for all of their lessons and for tutor time, but outside of that they're welcome to stay on site or work at home for their work periods. If students know they're going to be absent, in the past we asked them to fill out an orange excusal form. This year we've simplified that system to avoid so much paperwork, and we would simply ask that a parent or carer emails the sixth form email address as far in advance as possible if we know that there's a planned absence, and students can then use their Google Classrooms to get the work off their teachers. If a student's ill or unable to attend on a particular day and we have an unplanned absence, again, you can email in, use study bugs on the school website, or call, and we would ask that that absence is reported by 8:30 on the day. Some of the things we want to avoid students missing school for can be seen here. So certainly things like holidays, interviews for sort of part-time jobs, driving lessons, medical appointments that you're able to book and pick the timing of yourself, social events, and so on. Normally we would say, we don't want students really missing school for very, very minor illnesses. Of course, at the moment we're being a bit more careful with things like that. And if a student does have symptoms related to the coronavirus, of course, we would ask them to stay at home and for you to let us know. But if someone's just got a bit of a sniffle over winter and they're not the coronavirus symptoms, we would ask students to persevere as much as possible. Punctuality is also very important. We're monitoring that on a day-to-day basis, both punctuality to lessons and punctuality to tutor time. And again, we do get these kind of excuses being made quite a lot by students for being late, and we would really appreciate your support as parents and carers in making it clear that these are not valid reasons to be late. Punctuality is really important so that they can get the maximum benefit out of the lessons, so that we can avoid late arrivals to class causing disruptions. And of course, it's a standard expectation in any job that you would be in the right place at the right time. Here's some suggestions of things students can do to support their punctuality. And again, we have a stepped process for dealing with punctuality as well. Behaviour is important, particularly in the sense of behaviour for learning. We want students to be conducting themselves in lessons in a way that allows their peers to learn effectively and also gives them the best possible chance of learning. We also want people to behave in a way around the site that allows us to have a really safe and purposeful working environment for all students. Where behaviour doesn't meet the appropriate standards, we do issue penalty points as our major sanction, and here's some of the most likely reasons for those to be given. Not meeting deadlines is probably the most common, and of course that has a very direct impact on learning, so it's something to be avoided. And again, here we have the details of our stepped process for dealing with behavioural issues. One of our key rules is that students wear their lanyards all time on the school site. So they must have the lanyard on around their neck with their own ID badge facing forward so that we can see the name in the picture. And that system has been expanded this year, and in fact every student from year 7 through to year 13 will have to wear a lanyard, and the same goes for staff as well. Another one of our key rules is around mobile phone use. Essentially, students can use their mobile phones in their work areas and in their work periods, but we shouldn't have phones out in lessons unless the teacher has specifically given permission for students to use them, and sixth form students shouldn't have their mobile phones out where the younger pupils in the school are able to see them. The dress code is sort of the final area of the rules that we get the most questions about. You can see there the aims of our dress code and here the details of it. And moving on now to really one of the key focuses for year 13, which is around university applications. So university applications are made through a system called UCAS if you're applying to university in the UK. In the final week of year 12, we did a whole series of live streamed events that I delivered to, at the time, our year 12 students, now our year 13s. One of those sessions was on registering for UCAS. So all students should now have created their account and linked it to the school, and they should have started to fill in as many of the sections as they can, including the education and qualifications one, and students should start to have researched their course and university choices and made some good progress with that, and they should be starting to make sort of final decisions about where they would like to apply to, although there may still be some research to be done there, and we wouldn't have necessarily expected all students to have chosen their 5 courses they want to apply for at this stage. If students haven't yet registered for UCAS or they're having trouble filling in individual sections of the application, there are resources on the Careers and Progression Google Classroom that we posted in the last week of Year 12 that they can go back to and use to help them. We really, really would encourage every single student in Year 13 to do a UCAS application. It's not too much work. They only cost about £20, and it really allows students to keep their options open throughout Year 13 in terms of what they would like to do afterwards. There may be some students who are absolutely sort of resolute that they don't want to go to university, and we know that there's lots of other options after sixth form in terms of apprenticeships and employments, but there's very little to be lost by doing a UCAS application, but lots to be gained in terms of keeping your options open. If students are not intending to do a UCAS application, or they're not convinced university is the path for them, I would really encourage them to let myself or Miss Pugh know so that we can arrange them an appointment with one of our trained careers advisors. One of the big jobs that causes the most anxiety within a UCAS application is the personal statement. Again, students were briefed in the final week of Year 12 extensively on how to write a personal statement, and there's resources on the Careers and Progression Classroom for how to do that. Those resources really are very detailed. They give a structure for the personal statement, lots of tips, and there are some examples from prior personal statements we've had. Students were then asked to complete their first draft over summer and submit that to their form tutors on the first day back. Form tutors are then giving feedback on drafts, and we would really encourage students to also show their personal statement to a subject teacher who is a specialist in something similar to the course they're applying for at university. So, for example, if a student was applying for maths, they should show it to a maths teacher. If a student was applying for something like law, then they might show their personal statement to a history or an English teacher, because that's got a similar skill set. It's really important that students do get on with their personal statements, because most people will go through 5 to 6 drafts before they arrive at the finished product, and this is really a sort of task that can drag on and on and on, and it's better just to get it done, get it out of the way, so that students can really focus on their learning. Predicted grades are understandably one of the aspects of the application about which we have the most questions and that cause the most anxiety. Up to this point, we've encouraged students and parents or carers to base their research about the university students might apply to on their ALPS target grades, because that's the best data we have up to this point. Normally, we would generate UCAS predicted grades by doing a full set of exams at the end of Year 12, using the results of those exams as a sort of minimum or a baseline, and then looking to see if students might be given a higher UCAS predicted grade than what they got at the end of Year 12 if we had other assessment data from earlier in the year to support that. Of course, this year we haven't been able to go through that process because it was not possible to do exams at the end of Year 12, and so we've really had to think carefully about how we can give predicted grades that both give students the best possible chance to apply to aspirational choices of university in what's likely to be a very competitive marketplace for sort of spots on undergraduate courses this year, whilst at the same time ensuring that we're using a data-led process that treats all students consistently and fairly, and that also maintains the integrity of our predictions from the perspective of the universities. So what we have done is taken all of the data that we've got this year, from ALPS targets to the assessment scores that we do have from throughout the year in sort of more formal assessments, such as sort of mocks that were done much earlier in Year 12, and also predictions from teachers based on a sort of holistic view of all the data they hold on students. I'm then looking through those pieces of data, and we're going to be awarding students predicted grades based on the highest of those pieces of data. So, for example, if a subject teacher had said at the kind of end of Year 12, well, we think that a student's most likely to get a B grade, but their ALPS target was an A, we would give them the higher grade of the A for their UCAS prediction. So these are due to be published on Friday, and hopefully students will feel that we're really supporting them and giving them the best possible chance of submitting a competitive application to university. I would say that when these predicted grades come out, we will give a more detailed explanation of how they've been determined, how our process has been different to normal, what the purpose of them is, and the process that students can go through if they would like to sort of discuss those predicted grades and ask for them to be changed. Until UCAS applications are actually sent, it is possible to modify the predicted grades. So I would encourage both yourselves as parents and carers and the students as well to view those predicted grades they're given on Friday sort of as a provisional set. They will not go down from what they're given on Friday, but if students do particularly well in their mocks at the beginning of October, or they do particularly well in assessments throughout the course of October, November, December, then we're happy to keep discussing the predicted grades, and as long as we've got some good evidence in the form of assessment data, we'll be happy to raise them from those initial predictions. I think it is also really important to say at this point that our UCAS predicted grades are aspirational. So we normally take a really optimistic view of the data we hold on students and give UCAS predictions that are probably a little bit higher than the most likely outcome for students to receive in their actual exams at the end of year 13. And we do that so that students are really submitting a strong application and have a great chance of securing offers from the top universities. You may notice throughout the year that there is a difference between the UCAS predicted grades and then the predicted grades that teachers are giving in monitoring as a sort of realistic prediction of what students might get at the end of the year. So the purpose of the UCAS predicted grades is really to secure offers from universities, and the predictions that we give in monitoring may in some cases be a little bit lower, and those are the sort of really realistic predictions. So it is important to kind of understand that distinction, and I appreciate that the similarity in language can create some confusion. These are the key deadlines for UCAS. The important one there that's fast approaching is the early entry deadline, 15th of October, for Oxbridge, Medicine, Dentistry, Veterinary Science. We have an internal deadline of the 23rd of October for all other applications, but that is our own school deadline. And then the final deadline for all other UCAS applications is the 15th of January. There are a small number of students who may need to do an entry exam. This is particularly common for students applying to Oxford or Cambridge. There's a link here in the PowerPoint about the particular courses that will require an entry exam. We are able to enter students for most of these exams ourselves and allow them to sit them on the school site. Our exams officer, Mrs. DeRose, can give you more information about that through the exams at Waldegrave email address. And we have also posted a link to a Google form on the tutor group Google Classrooms, allowing students to register for those exams with us. It is really important to note that it is the responsibility of students to tell us if they want to be registered for an entry exam. They need to identify whether or not they need to do one, and they need to take the responsibility for registering for it before the deadline. Universities have a zero tolerance policy if students miss the deadline. So it's really important that everyone thinks carefully about this now and lets us know by completing that Google form if they do need to do an entry exam. Emotional well-being is going to be very important this year. This is sort of the varied range of emotions that we will see in school, I'm sure, this year, and which you may see at home. All of these are perfectly understandable emotions for students to experience in what can be a very stressful and anxiety sort of ridden time of their lives. But the important thing to remember is that students have lots of people here to support them, from their form tutor to their head of year to myself as the head of sixth form. We have access to the school nurse, mentors, counselling here, and we can also refer to outside agencies. So if you have worries about your daughter or son yourself, please let us know. And equally, the message to students is that they can come and see us at any time. And we know that this year, with the pressure that students are under, with the feelings they may have about missing so much of school last year, and the effect of having to return to such a busy school environment after so much time away, that is likely to create new challenges in terms of emotional well-being, but we're here to help. Here's some ways that parents or carers can support us as well. It's really helpful to us if you read the weekly newsletter that you're using the SICK format email address whenever you're contacting a member of staff. Please don't email staff directly to their personal emails. They've been instructed not to reply to parental emails going directly to them. Everything needs to go through the SICK form at one, and we will forward it on to the relevant person. And please support the PTA. They do really valuable work that makes a real tangible difference to the school. As I said, please use this SICK format email address to contact us. And normally, if we were together in person, you'd have the opportunity to come up and ask some questions. Clearly, that's not possible in this format. But if you do have any queries, please email those into the SICK format address, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found that helpful.